Hey, Slater Crusaders, America's the greatest country in the world. Welcome to Monday. Glad you're here. Welcome to another crazy week, I'm sure. I was thinking about this the other day. So I guess we got like 100 days till the election or something. So back in Shakespeare, by the way, there's this fly flying around the studio and he's gonna land on my nose at least 10 times. So you're gonna get, like, this is never a masculine look. Like that that will never look cool. Or I do a Miyagi for the first time in my life right on TV, and we can save that clip forever. So back in Shakespeare day, before the play, they put on like a mini play, like an overture kind of what the play was actually about. So it'd be like a 5-minute short like pantomime of what the play was about. And it was called The Dumb Show. So right now, we are living in what is merely the dumb show of what will be November 3rd. That's when the real show starts. All the stuff in Portland, Seattle, all the stuff, I don't know. That's just the dumb show for what's really going to happen in 100 days. Because November 3rd is going to be a disaster. Absolute disaster. We'll talk about that a little later this week. But I just want to say that to put these crazy days and weeks in context to what is about to come. Because there's no way that November 3rd goes well at all. Anyway, we'll do that later. So the news is Cal State, so the Cal State higher education system in California, they are now requiring ethnic and social justice studies courses as a graduation requirement. And there's a debate going on right now in California between the state reps who mandated this and the Cal State trustees as to whether we should force all the students to take a single ethnic studies course or give them the freedom to choose between 5 different ethnic studies courses, each one about a specific aggrieved group, so Native American grievances or the Hispanic grievance course or whatever, right? So that's the big debate. It's not should we teach ethnic studies or not, it's which kind of ethnic study courses should we force UC kids to, or Cal State kids to take. One of the courses that they're proposing is about exploring the issues of the criminal justice system. Do you think in that course there's going to be anything from Jason Riley there, who we talked to last week? Think there's going to be anything from Thomas Sowell, anything from Walter Williams, who has spent decades of research on this topic of criminal justice reform? Is there going to be any of these men? I'll tell you a little something that's not going to be taught, I guarantee you. Perspective. Perspective is so deceiving. I will just use criminal justice as an example. People have this perception of mass incarceration. And you'll hear people say that half of prisoners, half of everyone in jail are there for drug charges. You heard that before? Like this war on drug talk. And we gotta let those people free, whatever. So what they really mean to say is half of federal prisoners are in jail on drug charges. Right? So you think of that, and I mean, do you share that perspective as well? I would have if you asked me the other day. Someone says half of prisoners are in for drug charges, I'd be like, oh, okay, like I'm no reason not to believe that, so sure. Well, first, again, it's only half of federal inmates, and federal inmates only make up 12% of all federal prisoners, so it's half of 12%, but even that's not even true. Check out this graph here. So this is the big giant green on the left, as you can see that very well. That's state prisoners. That's where most of our prisoners are. Then the big orange one's local jails. And that little gold slice to the right, that's the federal. So you can say half of that slice are people on drug charges. But that's not a lot. Because then you got your state and your local jails. Now, among those facilities, let's look at state facilities, which is the biggest majority, right? Or which is the majority. In state facilities, drug offenses are only 15% of prisoners. Not 50%, but 15%. So what makes up the rest? Well, murder is 14%. Rape or sexual assault is 13%. Robbery is 13%. Aggravated or simple assault is 10%. Burglary is 10%. All right, so people in state prisons, they're there for violent offenses. That's the truth, not minor nonviolent drug charges. Also, people who are there on drug charges in state prisons, 45% are there for less than a year. And then among those who are there for drug charges, they're almost always there for having done things way worse than your minor nonviolent, which is always how you hear the media describe it. They take a plea bargain, right? They're charged something way more serious, what they actually did, and and also for drug possession. They take a plea bargain. They just go to jail for the drug charges, and everything else gets dropped. So it says that they're in jail for drug charges, but they did way more serious things than that. Also, you can't equate drug with nonviolent, right? People tend to, nonviolent drug. No. Check this stat out. 75% of released drug offenders are rearrested for a non-drug crime later. In Baltimore, in 2017, 118 homicide suspects, right? There were 118 homicide suspects. 70% of them had previously been arrested on drug charges. So you see there's quite an overlap between people who are murdering people and who have been or are in drugs or drug trade or drug trafficking or whatever. Right? So that's a perspective that I'm pretty sure is not going to be shared at the Cal State Ethnic Studies, Social Justice, Criminal Justice class. I wouldn't be surprised if nothing factual was shared. Let me give you an example of this. This is a real humdinger of a line from the New Yorker, right? 5,000-word essay on the history of the police in the United States. And they try to make this claim, and I've never heard this claim my entire life until like a month ago, and now I hear it everywhere, that the police are racist. It's the same kind of thing they do with the 1619 Project, right? So America's racist at its core because our true founding was 1619 when the first slave came to America. Therefore, we're racist today. So they do the same thing with police. They'll say, the police, they're racist. Oh, what's your proof? Because you have no statistical proof. You can't prove that actually. So what do they say? Well, the police were founded because of slave patrols in the South. Now that's absurd. like that makes no sense at all. There were police before the South was a thing, before slave. It's a ridiculous proposition. But you see what they're trying to do? Oh, it was racist in its origin, therefore still racist. Anyway, check out this quote. This is from the New Yorker, right? One study suggests that 2/3 of Americans between the ages of 15 and 34 who were treated in emergency rooms, okay, you with me? So you take all the people who have been in emergency rooms between the ages of 15 and 34, 2/3 of them suffered injuries inflicted by police and security guards. 2/3, so visualize this is important, 2/3 of people between the ages of 15 and 34 who go to the ER are there because of police brutality. 2/3? What? There's no way that's true. 2/3 because of police brutality. Think of all the reasons you've been to the ER. And think of all the times you've gone to the ER. You're looking around like, is anyone there? Have you seen anyone there for police brutality? We're supposed to believe 2/3 of people in that age bracket are there because of police brutality. Think of all the reasons you could go to think of all the reasons anyone could go to the ER. We're supposed to believe that 2/3 in that age group are there because of police brutality. There's no way that's true. Now, in this article that has many different links, no link to that study. Now, I should note the person who wrote this isn't just some random person. This is the writer of this is a professor of American history at Harvard, award-winning, all the rest. So the best that anyone could find is a 2016 study from another Harvard person. And gosh golly, wouldn't you know it, that 2/3 claim is not even close. But look at what this writer did. Okay, the true number is 61.1% of people. Slater, 2/3, 61 points versus 66. That's what your beef is about? No. 61% of people injured by police are between the ages of 15 and 34. Makes sense? Do you see how she flipped it? She got it backwards. So it's not 61% of all people in this age group who go to the ER are there because of police brutality. It's all the people who are injured by police. 61% are in that age bracket. She got it backwards. Those are two very, very different things. So what's the real number? What percentage of ER visits by people in that age group are from police brutality? It's not 66%. It's not 61%. It is 0.2%. This is Louise Perry. This is the woman who did the digging here. She called it a catastrophic how she put it? It's like catastrophic political bias warping reality here. She said, like many other left-leaning Democrats, she, the Harvard writer, is convinced that police brutality is a huge under-acknowledged problem in the US, and she therefore jumped to the conclusion that this wildly inflated 0.2 to 66%, this wildly inflated two-thirds figure was plausible. And the staff at the New Yorker who read the piece also, we must assume, considered it to be plausible too. And the sentence hasn't been corrected yet. Isn't that amazing? Think of all the steps that this had to go. The writer had to write it, the editors had to write, and every single and the readers had to read it, and every single person who read that was like, yeah, that sounds right. 2/3 of everyone in this age group in the ER for police brutality, you're like, that sounds right? What are you talking about? That's not even close. But they so wanted it to be true. And it so fit their agenda. It so fit the point that she was trying to make in this entire article. It was too good to check. It was too good to fact check. Too good to actually link to the study and read it and ever been quote from it. And that's what Trump derangement syndrome can do to you. It reminded me of this video here. This is an amazing video. I think of this video from time to time. Okay, this was back in March when, like, eons ago, Michael Bloomberg was a thing we talked about. Remember this? Like, whoa, Nelly. So Bloomberg dropped out of the race, and the story was he spent a ton of money. Okay, so this is Brian Williams and Mara Gay. She's a member of the editorial board for the New York Times. Okay, so we had two pretty influential people here talking about his race.
But you see it as a possibility if he wants to spend $1 billion beating this guy, he could do it.
Absolutely. Somebody tweeted recently that actually with the money he spent, he could have given every American $1 million.
I've got it. Let's put it up on the screen. When I read it tonight on social media, it kind of all became clear. Bloomberg spent $500 million on ads. U.S. population 327 million. Don't tell us if you're ahead of us on the math. He could have given each American $1 million and have had lunch money left over. It's an incredible way of putting it.
It's an incredible way of putting it. It's true. It's disturbing. It does suggest, what we're talking about here, which is there's too much money in politics. And it makes it difficult because what we want...
That clip is so incredible to me. Listen, I'm no math whiz, right? I'll make a math error from now and again. But I guarantee there'll be some offhand, kind of I missed that or whatever. This, someone wrote that tweet. The editorial board member saw it, sent it to the producers of MSNBC. The producers saw it and said, oh, this is amazing. Made a graphic for it. Brian Williams saw it. Everyone saw this and said, yeah, that's probably right. That's probably right that Bloomberg could give everyone $1 million. What are you talking about? And Bloomberg, or Williams, oh man, when I read this tonight on social media, it all became clear. This wasn't an offhand thing. It all became clear. And then they quadruple downed on it when she goes, it's an incredible way of putting it. And then she said, yeah, it's true. It's true. It is most definitely not true. So what's the truth? Bloomberg, not $1 million. He could have given every American $1.53. Okay, but listen, I'm not here to make fun of math. The point is, it's a classic bias. You make up your mind, and then you find the facts to suit your opinion. Karl Marx did it throughout Das Kapital. Das Kapital, I don't know if we're going to do a segment on this or not. I can't tell if it's entertaining, but the whole thing is he just makes up everything. It just totally makes it up, uses old sources, doesn't check. It's so bad what he does, but he made his argument, he made his conclusion, and then he had to find stuff in order to fit it. There's a story we'll talk to Professor Racaniello coming up in a little bit about this, but there's one of the epidemiologists at Yale Medical School or Public Health School, I forget which one, talked about HCQ. He's like, this is outrageous that we're not using HCQ more, but we're not doing it because Trump said it's good. So if Trump said it's good, then it is bad. Okay, so it's an epidemiologist at Yale. But it's the same thing. We decided it's bad because Trump said it's good. So therefore, we're only going to cite the studies that show, this or whatever that fit our opinion. The refounding of America, right? The 1619 Project. So many historians have come out and said, this is crazy wrong. Historians have said, they asked me to fact check this before it was published. And I said, whoa, this is wrong. and all these different, and then they still published it anyway. All these examples, people making up their mind and then only finding evidence to prove themselves right. Trump derangement syndrome can really fry your brain. True story. Mike Slater, spread the word. Hey, Slater Crusaders, years ago, had to be 8 years ago, I went to the San Diego Pride Parade, and I went around and I asked people there, what percentage of men do you think in America are gay? What percentage of men are gay? And people deadpan, straight face, 40%, 30%. Someone said 60, maybe 60%. And I wonder if you guys no, not what percentage of men who are here are gay in the country. Yeah, probably, 40%. It's what are you, out of your mind? It's 2, or it's 2%. But they wanted it to be true and that all their friends are gay or whatever. So they're oh, well, everyone must be gay. See how perception could totally change everything. That's a funny video. It's out there somewhere. So I mentioned Marx a second ago. I want to do a segment on Marx and Capital and how he just made everything up. But just for a second here, we can talk about how Karl Marx never worked a day in his life. I think it's important to know that because, again, the more you know about Karl Marx, the man, the more you know about Karl Marx's followers, which is everyone we're seeing right now. But it was more than he never worked a day in his life. More than him being a silver spoon trust fund baby, entitled and spoiled beyond belief. He actively avoided any opportunity to learn what it was like to actually be a worker. Right? So it's the same thing from to tie it into the last segment, these people who don't want to know the truth. They don't want to look deeper. They made up their mind already. Same thing with Karl Marx. He already made up his mind. Well, Marx, why don't you talk to this worker guy over here? Don't need to. Why, if you are a Marxist, why would you ever take advice from someone who has never worked? Right? Workers of the world, unite. People credit him with saying that. He never even said that. Or he wasn't the one who said that first, I should say. But who's going to, let's follow the guy who never worked. But it's true with a lot of his phrases. So it was Marat who said, the workers have no country. The proletarians have nothing to lose but their chains. It was Heine who said, religion's the opium of the people. It was Louis Blanc who said, from each according to his abilities, to each according to his needs. It was some German politician, I'm forgetting his name, some socialist politician who said, workers of all countries unite. All right, so Karl Marx didn't even say these lines that he's most famous for having written. When he was 24, Karl Marx was writing an article it was about the rights of local peasants to gather wood or something, whether they could or couldn't on their land or the noble's land or whatever. But Marx never talked to the peasants, and he never talked to the landowners who he was writing about. He wrote another article about the plight of people in Poland. Never went there. It was about weavers in particular. Never talked to a weaver. In fact, he never talked to anyone ever about finance or the economics of industrial processes. Of course, Engels, who was the manager of his dad's factory, who Marx got all of his money to live off of. But what did Engels know? He didn't know anything either. Karl Marx never set foot in a mill, factory, a mine, never any industrial workplace in his entire life. But it's even worse than that. Ignorance is one thing if he was just ignorant. He attacked anyone who did. So Marx was in England, which is where he spent most of his time. 1845, he went to a meeting of the German Workers' Education Society. And he hated the fact that all the men who were there were skilled workers. Marx wasn't a worker. He was a trust fund baby. He hated the workers. There were watchmakers and printers and shoemakers, and the leader was a forester. And he resented the fact. He didn't like that they were self-educated and disciplined and well-mannered and sober, all the things he wasn't. So he hated these guys that were. Also, these guys weren't apocalyptic. Karl Marx was always apocalyptic from the jump. These guys thought that, we could just make some modest reforms and improve our lives, and it would be great. But Karl Marx wanted this complete revolution. Marx preferred not to hang out with the working class. He preferred to hang out with sort of like middle-class intellectuals. He never got access to the upper-class intellectuals. Those guys never even knew he existed. He was in the Communist League in Brussels, and he put this guy up for trial. So this guy who he persecuted was the illegitimate son of a laundress. He never knew his father's name, right? But he became a tailor's apprentice just through sheer hard work, self-education, the whole thing. And he created this following among German workers, and Marx hated him for it. So Marx had to tear him down because this guy was living proof against Marx's doctrine of the self-made man in a capitalist system. The guy's name was William Weierling or something. So this guy, this Weierling, he spoke for the actual working man, and he wasn't going to submit to the views of some mere like theories from some guy who has no clue what he's talking about. So they're having some argument, and Marx, it was written by someone there that he got so enraged, he struck his fist on the table. Everything on the table shook and fell over, and he ran out of the room in a violent rage, which was par for the course for Karl Marx. This is Paul Johnson in his book, Intellectuals. He said, this was the pattern for further assaults, both on socialists of working class origin and of any leaders who had secured a large following of working men by preaching practical solutions to actual problems of work and wages rather than doctrinal revolution. I got tons of examples here. We're not going to do it now, but just of the racist and anti-Semitic attacks that he made on people who disagreed with him. But again, I should note, it wasn't upper-class philosophers who disagreed with him. They never heard of him. It was always middle and lower-class actual workers who said, Karl, you're crazy. You're crazy. You have no idea what you're talking about. And he'd freak out, storm out of the room. Right? How much of Marx's philosophy and his writing came from his own either entitlement, like last week or 2 weeks ago when we shared his bio, the fact that he was always broke and he relied on other people and his family members dying in order to get money. And when his mom did not give him an advance on his inheritance, he said that my family's always putting obstacles in my way. I mean, it's like maximum narcissism and entitlement. So how much of it, and also he was in debt all the time. So all these collectors would come and want his money. He would never pay rent, so all the landlords would want his money. So how much of his philosophy of hating the capitalist and hating the landowners came from the fact that he didn't want to pay his debts and didn't want to pay his rent. So you have his own entitlement, but you also have his own insecurities. Remember last week we talked to Michael Shellenberger. He's the author behind Apocalypse Never. Former environmentalist, or I guess still an environmentalist, but he's not a doom, like the world's going to end kind of guy. And we talked to him about why scientists and people fall for this stuff. And he said three things. Was it money, fame, and religion? I think those are the three. And on the religion part, this environmentalist religion is the same with the religion of Marxism, right? People are looking to fill a God-sized hole in their heart. And as Shellenberger said, to deal with the like big existential questions of death, right? And if you're an atheist, environmentalist, postmodernist, Marxist, there's no afterlife. And if there's no afterlife, then you need to make a legacy today. And what more heroic legacy can there be than I saved the planet, Mother Earth, from destruction? If the planet's all there is, then if I'm the person who saves it, then I'm the most heroic person who have ever lived. And he says it's also environmentalism, and it says for him and for many others, it was a way to make a moral code. He said there's a lot of anxiety and uncertainty in the world, in life, and people are wanting to show that they're moral in the midst of an anxious time. So they promote this apocalyptic, or in Marx's case, revolutionary scenario, so that they can see themselves, and so that others can see them, as the heroes in this crisis of existence and humanity. I think there's a lot to that. Glenn Lowry spoke about this the other day as well.
You know, this race thing, it only goes skin deep. Down underneath, people are struggling with life. Everybody is struggling with the same dilemma of the human condition. We really got to keep it in perspective. We have a lot more in common than we have that separates us. I mean, the idea, because I'm Black and I work on racial inequality, I think about this a lot, but the point I'm making is much more general. It's a point about we are not any particular thing. We're not our ancestor. We're not what our fathers believed. We're not the color of our skin. We're not what continent our ancestors came from. We're open-ended. We have free will. We can make our lives. And everybody is confronted with exactly the same existential challenge. How to make the best out of your life. Everybody faces that challenge, regardless of what their background is.
I'd just like to make note of the there we go. Marx was a deadbeat and keeping it subtle here on true story with Mike Slater. That's how it's true. Definitely a deadbeat, definitely a racist. We shared the story a couple weeks ago of his son-in-law was running for a city council seat in Paris where the zoo was. And I have the quote here somewhere. Okay, so this is Engels. Wrote a letter to him. Being in the quality as a N-word, Marx's son-in-law, a degree nearer to the state of the animal kingdom than the rest of us, he is undoubtedly the most appropriate representative of that district, the one with the zoo. So there's we can give many other evidences, but that's plenty. Marx was a deadbeat and a racist. Back to Lowry. How many of the modern movements in the last, 150 years have come from people who have their own issues to work out, their own existential challenges, as Lowry just did. But instead of working them out properly under the care of a trained psychologist, they've just projected them out into the world, like Marx, and justified them by redefining what is right, like Rousseau did. I'm going to give all 5 of my kids up to the orphanage, abandon them at birth. Oh, and you should too. Everyone should be educated by the state. How many of these philosophers are just trying to fill the void left, in the words of Chloe Valdere, the spiritual malnourishment that has been left from kicking God and Christianity out of the public square and out of our lives? True story. Mike Slater, spread the word. Hey, Slater Crusaders, I read this article from Ryan Holiday the other day. It's been a while since I've read from Holiday, and I was reminded of how much or why I like him so much. So his article about the best career advice he's ever received, and it's about much more than careers, and I feel like if we all took this advice, if everyone in the country took this advice, we wouldn't be where we are right now with all these protests and everything. So he tells the story of a guy, Bill, back in 1975. He was 23 years old, unemployed, had a job as an assistant coach on a football team, but it fell through. He wrote 250 letters to college and professional football coaches. He just needed a chance. And he ended up getting an unpaid job, like an internship, with the Baltimore Colts. And the Colts needed someone to do the job that everyone hated, analyze game film. Now, back then, it was actual film, like a projector film. It's cumbersome. You had to cut it. You had to literally cut it. And it was cumbersome and frustrating and monotonous and unpaid. Did I mention unpaid? It was grunt work. But he said, I'm going to do the best at it. Remember, hard work is a white supremacist value these days. You're not supposed to teach your kids to work hard. You're not supposed to teach you, don't be like Bill. Don't work hard at something. But he wanted to be the best at precisely what others thought they were too good for. One coach said he was like a sponge, taking it all in. He would just disappear into this room, and he just always wanted to do more. But here's the most important part. It's not just that it was thankless work. He would get some insight, and he would give it to coaches, and they would use it, and he would never take credit. He never wanted the credit, didn't care. He just wanted to do the work. Today, our culture is the opposite. Today, our culture says, don't do any work and claim all the credit, right? Get constant accolades, all the likes, all the hearts, whatever, after doing no work. I don't have time. I want to get to the professor. I don't have time to go on a rant about. I'm seeing all these articles about people suing or complaining about their bosses who are mean. It's like, what are you kidding me? My boss didn't like my idea and he was mean to me. No one ever considers the fact that maybe you're not a good employee and you had a really bad idea and your boss was too busy to coddle your feelings at that very moment. Get over yourself. But our society's been preaching backwards for a long time, right? Social media is that. Do no work, right? Do as little as possible. Maybe change your avatar or something, but take maximum credit for everything. Even things you don't do, but you say you will do or should do or others should do. Anyway, if you didn't figure it out, that guy Bill was Bill Belichick, 6-time Super Bowl winning. Maybe, I don't know, greatest coach today. Trump fan too, can't say that though. One other key here is the making other people look good. And that was the real advice from Ryan Holiday, or the one that he got. And that's what he did his whole life. He started out as an assistant in Hollywood, and he made sure that he made his boss look good. The advice was, forget credit so hard that you're glad when other people get it instead of you. So you're so not looking for credit that when other people get it, you're happy for them. All right, what a beautiful lesson on empathy. But you need to work to get there. You need to actively be celebrating when something good happens to someone else. When someone else gets a promotion and you don't. Right? That's hard, but it's the only antidote to envy. And Ryan Holiday, he calls it this mindset, the canvas strategy. So back in ancient times and medieval times, I shouldn't say ancient, like medieval Renaissance times, there's a person called the ante ambulo. In ancient Rome, did they talk like ante ambulo? Like they speak, I don't know if they did like, it means walk before, ante's before, ambulo's walk. So it was a client who would walk in front of his patron and make life easier for him in every way. Like clear the way and tell people he's coming and set up reservations, I don't know where. And the client was rewarded with money that they would then use to make art. Right? Like Michelangelo would be an ante ambulo, so he could get money to make his art. Now to do this, it takes incredible humility, something that's in very short supply today. Ryan Holiday said, when you enter a field, you can be sure of a few things. First, you're not nearly as good or as important as you think you are. You have an attitude that needs to be readjusted. And most of what you think you know or what you learned in books or in school is out of date or wrong. How much of what we see today is because of those three things? It's so easy to be bitter and prideful and have an ego, as opposed to chill out, humble out, take the lowest seat at the table, learn over time, make yourself indispensable, and make long-term relationships. That is the opposite of the modern progressive virtue of life is all about me always. I think if we tried this approach, I guarantee you we'd live in a more sane country. Coming up next, Professor Vincent Racaniello gives us the latest with COVID and the Moderna trial that just started right now. True story, Mike Slater, spread the word. Hey, Slater Crusaders, it is that time. I look forward to it every weekend. We talk with Professor Vincent Racaniello. He's the professor of virology at Columbia University. He is the bridge between the academia world and whatever world I'm in. I don't even know quite what that world is. Virologist and amateur astronomist, I should add as well. Professor, how are you, sir?
I'm very well, thanks. Good to be back.
I was just imagining little 7-year-old Vincent out in his backyard in New Jersey looking up at the stars. Taking in the satellites coming across the sky. That's a little microbe.tv joke. You wouldn't understand, but you can if you listen to the professor's podcast, This Week in Virology. Professor, I got a antibody test. I gave blood the other day, and they give you a free antibody test. And I am negative. What does that mean?
Well, first of all, it means that you've done a really good job at physical distancing. It's really great.
Professor.
I think you've been out of restaurants and bars. You've been away from people for the most part. And no one in your family most likely is infected as well. So I commend you for your negative antibody test.
That's the highest rating I've ever gotten from a professor in my entire life. Let that be known. A+ on staying away from sick people. All right, but where's the but?
Well, it could have been a false negative, of course. And it depends on what brand tests they use. Some are better than others. But I think it's fine. You should assume you're negative. But the thing is, you need to keep practicing whatever it is that you've been doing. Just keep it up and you'll stay negative, okay?
Why did a part of me want it to be positive, and then I felt like I would just be done with it because I'd have antibodies?
I think part of it is that you have not felt terribly sick in the past months. And if you were infected, that would be great, right? Oh, I didn't get sick. I didn't die. And here I am positive. And so I can see that part. I totally get that.
Okay, let's, I think the big news of the day is the Moderna vaccine going into phase 3. Is that right? So we have a ton of questions. Like, what's phase 3? How long does that take? What do you know about this, what's it called? Vaccine.
All right, so the Moderna vaccine is one of the first ones that has gotten really going here. This is a phase 3, which means they're putting it in a lot of people, 30,000 people in 87 different locations across the U.S., which is great. You have places with a lot of cases and not so many cases. And what they're looking for is still safety, and they're looking for effectiveness. Will it prevent you from getting infected? So they're going to take half these people and give them the vaccine, and half they're not going to get the vaccine. They're going to get what we call a placebo, and then they're going to send them out into the world and say you should still physically distance, you should still wear face masks, and then periodically bring them in and see if they've gotten infected. And then maybe after 6 months, I'm thinking now, what are we in the end of July? Probably by the end of the year, they're going to say, okay, how did this vaccine do? How many people were infected who got the vaccine compared to how many people were infected who did not? And that will give us the efficacy. And the FDA has said if it's 50% or better, we're going to license this vaccine. So it's an important milestone here.
Okay. All right. A lot of questions. So you think, 6 months. So how long does that normally take in a phase 3 trial? Did they speed it up for this?
Yeah, they've sped it up. It would take normally a few years to do this. Enrollment alone, just think, 30,000 people in 87 different places. You have to have at each place doctors and nurses and other people involved in setting up the study. Because, what happens is people apply to be part of it. Then they look at your medical records and see if you fit what they want, the age and the demographics and comorbidities and so forth. And then they have to bring you in and check you out, take some blood, take down your medical history, and then give you the vaccine. It's really a long process. So normally it would take years. We're speeding it up. In fact, the phase 2 isn't even over yet. Normally the phase 2 would go on for about a year, but they got the results after a couple of months of the phase 2, and they decided we have to go forward because it's an emergency, obviously.
Wow, that's amazing. That's amazing how it's doing that. When they tell people to go out in the world, should they tell them to act normal? Or, you mentioned you have to physically distance, still wear a face mask and all that.
Yeah.
To get better results, wouldn't you just want to go out and without that stuff?
Yes, of course. But ethically, they cannot tell people, go have a blast, go to bars, go to restaurants, right? Don't wear your face mask, hug people every minute. No, they can't do that. They are ethically unable to do that. So they have to tell people to behave properly, face masks, physical distancing, stay out of bars and restaurants and so forth. But as with all vaccine trials, when they do an AIDS vaccine trial, they do the same thing. They say you have to be safe. And what they're hoping is that still, despite them telling that, people are going to misbehave a little bit and get infected. And they're depending on that, of course, to do that. But no, ethically, they cannot tell people to let it all hang out.
Yeah, that makes sense. If people did follow the rules, right, and no one got sick, wouldn't that pump up the results and be like, oh, wow, look, it worked great. The vaccine worked amazing.
Well, if both groups, remember, there's a vaccine group and there's a placebo group. And if they both had equal infection rates, both very low, then you couldn't tell anything because you're hoping that the vaccine group does better than the placebo group, right? So, yes, even if people are distanced and there's 0 infections in both groups, you wouldn't learn anything from that. But we know that doesn't happen. We have enough experience with vaccine trials to know that people are going to get infected no matter what. And so we'll get good information from this. And as you know, right now we have lots of infections in the U.S. in many areas, so it's a good time to test the vaccine.
What's the 50% number again exactly? So
the FDA has said if half of the people who get the vaccine are protected, right, from getting infected, we will license the vaccine. So in the placebo group, presumably no one will be protected. It'll be 20, 30%, as randomly, people just don't get infected. But if the vaccine is 50% or better, they said, we'll license it. Now, 50% isn't a great number. You would rather have 80 to 90% effectiveness, right? Because think about it. If you license this vaccine and you immunize 100 people, half of them are going to be protected, but half not. That's not so good, right? So I would like it to be better than that. But the FDA has said, no, we're going to do 50 or greater. That's what that is.
50 is better than 50 is better than nothing, right?
Yeah,
but
it's better than nothing. Yes, absolutely right.
But it could give a false confidence, though, right? You're like, oh, I got the vaccine, I'm good to go, and maybe that could lead to more spread. So
in fact, the head of NIH said just past week, he said we won't know for a year whether vaccination really protects you in more than for a few months. So it's rushing things for sure. But as you say, it's better than nothing. But people have to understand, if you get vaccinated, you still have to behave safely.
Yeah. Are you still on your kind of next summer, next fall by the time you and I get one?
Yeah, I do think that's a good timeline. Next summer, next fall for sure. Yeah.
Okay. From what angle does this Moderna vaccine try to tackle the virus? Let's get virology on us.
All right, so these viruses there's one behind me there. I can't see it very well. The viruses are little spheres with
There's
proteins.
one behind you. What do you mean? What do you mean? There's one?
Yeah.
Got like a virus floating in the air, but
Yeah, I'll show you. Hang on.
yeah.
This is a glass virus.
Listen, the best teachers always bring the props. That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah, look at this. This is a glass virus that was made for me as a gift. And you see those spikes sticking out of it? I'm sure you can see those. Those are what the Moderna vaccine is targeting. They make nucleic acid encoding that spike protein, and that's what they're injecting into you. And the idea is that when you get injected, you're of course going to make antibodies against the spike. Remember what antibodies are, right?
Yes, there's two. The T cells can kill the cell, and antibodies kill the virus.
That's right. So this Moderna vaccine is going to make antibodies, which will then combine with the virus and prevent it from infecting. So it's only a very small part of the virus, right? Remember, there's a big virus particle here. It's only the spike. Moderna vaccine is the spike. And in fact, most of them are just the spike. And I've been highly critical of that because I think we should be including more than the spike. But that's the way it is. Nobody asked me. So only you did.
So what's it do to the spike exactly?
So the antibody, the antibodies are these protein molecules that kind of have a Y at one end, like this. And they have a part of them that can grab the virus. So they actually attach to the spike and they prevent it from getting in a cell. And then
it prevents it from attaching to the cell in the first place.
Exactly. So that's a good way to prevent infection. Yeah.
What attack would you, Alexander, go to storm the cities? If not through the spikes.
I would want as much of the virus as possible because I think there are other parts, other proteins that you don't see here, but there are proteins inside that I think are really important for preventing infection as well, and they should be included. In fact, some of the vaccine candidates do have those, but most of them don't. Most of them are spike only. But you know what? We don't have a lot of time to futz around with this, and that's why we're just going for the spike.
Less futzing. Well, I'm worried, Professor, because I'm too spoiled living in the age that we live in. I'm like, oh, this is amazing. Look how fast this vaccine's going. It's definitely going to work, and we'll be fine. Well, there's a chance this thing doesn't even work, and that would be a devastating blow to our confidence with all this, no?
Oh, you're absolutely right. There's a chance that it won't work, and part of the problem is that most of the experimental vaccines are all targeting that spike, and so you're putting all your eggs in one basket. So I would rather see some diversity. But, the fact that we can go this quickly is a testimony to our technology. But on the other hand, all the other vaccines we have spent years in development, and there were reasons for that. We had to get it right. So I'm a little bit worried, because if this doesn't work, it's going to be a big problem.
Okay. I got about a minute. I have a ton of questions, but I'd rather bring it to you. What's just one thing you think we need to know this week?
I think everybody needs to write their elected officials, leader, and so forth, and tell them to get $1 rapid testing going. You just take paper strips and put antibodies on them. You could then lick it. I talked about this last time. You put saliva on it, and you know in 15 minutes if you're infected or not. This is a game changer. We talked about this on TWIV 640, I think. And we need to do this, and we're not. We're not doing it in the numbers that we need, because that would be great for the fall. Before kids go to school, their parents could test them and say, you're infected, you have to stay home. This would totally change the outbreak. Even without a vaccine, this could be a game changer. So I want people to write to whoever you think has some authority. Write Mike and tell him to do this.
Right. No, don't write me. I don't know. What's it called? So we can tell him exactly what do we want?
We need rapid detection tests. $1, 10-minute detection tests that can go with saliva. Is some university pushing this, or is something we can point our ignorant politicians so
to?
Michael Mina, M-I-N-A at Harvard, he's been pushing this, and he's been writing all about it. You could look him up, but we had him on TWIV 640, and he explained it. And now people are writing, and I want everybody to write. You have a lot of listeners. Please write. Please tell senators, congressmen, heads of companies, whoever you can think of, please get these tests done, because they're not getting done fast enough, and we need it. It's really a game changer.
Great stuff. Professor, always good to talk to you, sir. Appreciate you.
Okay, have a good week.
Have a wonderful day. Thanks for the prop and insight. Always microbe.tv. And he mentions TWIV. That's This Week in Virology. That is the professor's podcast. All right, Slater, we'll see you tomorrow. Have a great rest of your day. True story. Mike Slater, spread the word.